At long last, Amir Khan versus Kell Brook is finally here. These two finally fight after years of back and forth and years of asking, will it happen now? But many people are writing this fight off, I feel. They say things like, these two are washed up. The fight has come too late. They both have one foot in retirement. And now these are valid claims, and I understand what they mean. This fight would certainly be bigger 7, 8, 9 years ago. However, I feel like it's evened out, and it's interesting because both guys are equally in that stage of their careers. There really isn't much between them in terms of mileage when you look at it. And also, they have a genuine rivalry. This isn't some fake beef that you see that's hyped up by companies like Sky to sell tickets and whatnot. This is a genuine hatred for each other. And I don't know about you, but I find that entertaining, and it's going to be intriguing to see them scrap it out finally. So Amir Khan, just to kind of get some context, Amir Khan's been out of the ring for just over 2.5 years, which, if you're a Khan supporter, it's not a good look. It doesn't fill you with confidence. Though, when you look at Khan's career, you'll see that he's no stranger to long layoffs, particularly in this latter stage of his career. And from what I've seen of Khan, his performances, for the most part, they don't seem to be hindered too much by ring rust. Some fighters, if they take a year off or more, they can come back and look terrible. Khan doesn't usually, he maintains a lot of his sharpness. So it's not good, but I don't think, as I say, Khan just doesn't suffer from ring rust too badly from what I've seen, at least previously. Brook, his last fight was a little over a year ago. That was in November 2020 when he lost to Terence Crawford by a 4th round stoppage. And now Crawford, of course, is a mutual opponent of these two. And because of that, naturally, people are going to make comparisons. And I remember quite clearly in the wake of Crawford versus Brook, people commented about commented on how Khan lasted longer, and therefore tried to insinuate that plays as a factor in a potential matchup between Khan and Brook, or Khan lasted longer so it shows he's less washed up. Personally, I didn't look into it like that. I disagree with that. The main reason why Khan lasted longer is because he was negative. He was more negative than Brook, and he also had much less success than Brook did against Terence Crawford. So that's really shouldn't be too surprising. If you're negative, you get less done. You also potentially last longer. But back to this fight. For the longest time, and I mean the longest time, probably since 2012, I felt that Kell Brook wins this fight, and most likely by a knockout. That strikes me as the most logical prediction that any objective observer could make or would make. However, since this fight has been made official in 2022, I've had a feeling of doubt in regards to Brook's chances. When we compare these two fighters, I feel like you can realistically see how each man could beat the other. So starting with Amir Khan, this is someone who has highlight reel hand speed. He really does have blistering hand speed, and it's something to behold, despite all Khan's flaws, which we'll get onto. He has good hand speed. And another attribute that I don't think often gets credit is Khan's heart. And excluding the Terence Crawford performance, he turns up to fight a lot of the time. And, there has, historically, there hasn't really been much give in Khan's desire. He's a very proud man, not a bright man, but he's proud. And he turns up to fight. He also has a pretty decent, solid work rate. I can't remember the last time I saw Khan gas in a fight. He doesn't necessarily work for 3 minutes of every round, but, he's got a good, solid work rate. But his shortcomings lie in his lack of boxing IQ, and I think most importantly, his underdeveloped defense. And both of these weaknesses are further exacerbated by his notoriously poor punch resistance. And now it's often exaggerated and it's a meme, it's a joke, like Amir Khan has been knocked out by his son, his toddler son in a pillow fight. It's all funny, it's all fun and games, but Khan really does have poor punch resistance. And there was always a coping mechanism where it's because he was weight drained, but every time he'd move up to another weight class, he'd say, my punch resistance is going to be better because I'm not struggling to make weight. He'd move up to that weight class and he'd get wobbled, knocked down and knocked out again. So yeah, he really does have poor punch resistance. But Khan has recently, in the lead up to this fight, teamed up with Crawford and his team. And this has led some people to believe that Khan is going to look to improve his IQ and his technique, and he's going to have a much more intelligent approach to this fight, and he's going to be a lot more careful, a lot more sound defensively. But I just think this is unlikely, because Khan has been with an intelligent trainer in the past in Virgil Hunter, and this was on a long-term basis, much longer than the time he's had with Team Crawford. And Hunter, for the most part, he did a good job of instilling some discipline into Khan, keeping him on a disciplined approach, on a straight and narrow throughout his fights. But even then, at times, Khan's impulsiveness would come through in a fight and nearly cost him. So I'm not sure how much Crawford and his trainers are going to be able to help Khan. But in Kell Brook is a fighter who doesn't have the speed of Khan, but makes up for it with better power, a more thoughtful and patient style, and I feel just better overall strength and sturdiness, which, to be fair, isn't that difficult compared to Amir Khan. But anyway, though Brook himself, he's not the best defensively either. He can show a decent amount of instinct in the ring. Often you'll see him, he'll block shots, he'll roll shots, he'll pull away from shots. You know, he has that. It's not the most technically sound, but he can pull it off sometimes. Brook himself doesn't have the highest work rate, and Khan is a very fast starter. And I think this means that there's a very real chance of Khan catching Brook cold, just like he did with, say, Phil LaGreco and some others. Khan, if he can knock you down early, he can sting you early. In the case of Phil LaGreco, he can take you out early. So this prediction of, or the prediction of Khan catching Brook early is given weight by the fact that Brook was stopped early by Crawford. And, you know, Khan isn't Crawford. He doesn't have the same power. I think Crawford in his own right is a very sharp and very fast fighter, an underrated puncher. And I can understand it, but I think we have to remember the differences in style. I think also as well, with that prediction of Khan going in and catching Brook cold, it's important to remember that every time Khan looks to engage with Brook, he risks being timed by Kell Brook. And Kell Brook is renowned for his timing, and he can be very sharp with the jab and the right hand. Despite having this wicked speed, as I say, Khan can be painfully predictable at times. And it kind of almost negates his speed, as he presents his opponents with such clear opportunities to counter. And it's the old saying where speed beats power, timing beats speed. And look, yeah, those are sayings, but a lot of the time there is some truth to them. Because imagine you're a fighter like Amir Khan, where you're 0 or you're 100, as Khan usually is. Every time you have these bursts of speed, but you don't layer it with anything, because Khan, he doesn't feint much. He doesn't look to gauge his opponent's reaction. A lot of the time he'll be moving around the ring. He'll set himself and he'll just let off these blistering shots. And if there's a lapse in your concentration, or if you're not that sharp, your reflexes aren't that good, if you're out of position, he can get you with those and he can overwhelm you. But with Khan is, you know, if something's always going at 100 miles an hour, but it's easy to time, you don't necessarily have to be as quick as it. You just need to time it right. So if Khan was You know, if he mixed in more feints, if he used more controlling shots, if he was just a bit more intelligent with his engagement, he'd be a much better fighter. But he isn't. He's quite simple, you know. I mean, say Khan doesn't come across as the most intelligent person outside the ring, and his boxing style is kind of the same. He's fast and he's very excitable, but he's not really that clever. And now Brook is no Floyd Mayweather. He doesn't have the highest boxing IQ, but Brook's got a few more wrinkles to his game. He has a strange habit. I don't want to say habit, but he's one of the few fighters who actually counters really well with the jab. So a lot of fighters, they lead with a jab and they may counter your response with a right hand. And Kell Brook can do that. But sometimes he'll jab and then he'll counter your response with a jab. And so it makes him quite dangerous. And I feel like people underestimate that because a jab is even more direct than a right hand. And so Brook gets a good deal of force and power into it. And he's sharp and he's accurate. So at long range, Brook is he's a handful. But he can be outworked. Sometimes he's a little bit lazy with his defense. He'll opt to just kind of sit in the back half of his stance in a kind of like faux Philly shell. And he won't move anywhere from there. He'll have his right glove up to block the right side of his face. But then the entirety of his left side is exposed and he's not moving his head. He's not moving his feet much. So Brook is a little bit lazy with his defense, which could cost him against Khan. But with no amount of confidence, I just have to predict that Brook wins by KO. Probably, I want to say, in rounds 5 to 7. So rounds 5, 6 or 7, I can see Brook getting the stoppage. I'm struggling to think of how this fight goes. I can't see the tactics that either man is going to look to employ. One thing I will mention though is, if you've looked at any of the promotional stuff, like the gloves are off or the press conferences, Kell Brook is fired up for this fight, which is a good thing. However, some people have asked, and I think it's a valid question, is Brook too emotionally invested in this fight? Because he looks furious at some point. You can see the rage in his eyes because he hates Khan. He truly, truly hates him by the looks of it. Will that blind him? Because that's what can happen. Imagine you've gone through training camp and you just have visions of knocking out your opponent. And that's what you're going for. But you don't have any contingencies. You don't think, what happens if he comes out a certain way? What happens if he comes out and he's super negative? How am I going to close him down? He's not just going to be there for me to hit and knock out. So I'm having a difficult time trying to envisage how this fight plays out. But I do think that just weighing up the attributes of either man, I think I don't have any faith in Khan's punch resistance. I don't think his approach is intelligent enough. I think, yeah, he's got this speed, but he offers the opportunities, and someone who does have good sharpness and timing like a Kell Brook can capitalize. And I don't think Brook I don't think his punch resistance is as dented as people have made out since he's lost to Crawford. I do think that he can still take a shot. However, if he comes out cold, he may just be overwhelmed. He may just be stunned by Amir Khan if Amir Khan isn't too washed up himself. But yeah, I was actually talking to Pound for Pound Boxing. Shout out to you. Not long ago, and I think he's picking Khan. I think he's still going with Khan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he is. And I said it would be tragic if you're a Kell Brook fan for Kell Brook to be the one chasing Khan for all these years, because it's no secret Khan did not want this fight. He wants it now probably because he feels like Brook is sufficiently softened up and washed up. But Khan avoided this fight for years, quite shamelessly. And Brook was always chasing him. Imagine if now, after all these years, he finally gets him in the ring and he's the one that gets his ass kicked. That would be tragic. That would be such a tragic story. But it feels like it could happen. So I'm like, 51% in favor of Brook. That's, yeah, no confidence at all. I can see Brook winning by KO. I can see Khan winning by KO. I can see Khan potentially winning on points. Though I think a points victory for either man is quite unlikely, with Brook winning by points the most unlikely. I just think objectively the most likely outcome is Brook winning by KO, as I say, in rounds 5, 6 or 7. So most importantly, hopefully it's a good fight. Hopefully it's worth the wait, because we've been waiting for long enough. But nevertheless, let me know what you thought of my take in this video. So let me know in the comment section below. What do you think of the fight? What are your predictions? Let me know. I'll get back to you. If you could like, comment, share and subscribe, that will all be greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.